What if I told you that everything they tried to use to destroy you was actually what made you unstoppable? Have you ever wondered why some people fall and never get up again, while others come back even stronger, wiser, and more dangerous to any enemy? You didn't come across this video by chance. Maybe you're here because you're about to understand that every delay, every betrayal, and every silence you've experienced was actually a rehearsal for the most decisive moment of your life. And I need you to watch until the end, because within this message lies a key that can completely change the way you see what you've been through. Before we continue, please leave a like now. It shows you're ready to turn things around. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any messages like this, because each new revelation could be the push you needed to level up. And I want you to comment below with the number 22, because whoever types that number will be declaring that they're ready for a new beginning, so powerful no one can stop them. Now, take a deep breath, because what I'm about to reveal to you next isn't just about surviving, it's about becoming untouchable. They thought they had defeated me when they decided to bury me. They used words as sharp as blades, spread lies with the coldness of those who believe they will never be confronted, and made a point of erasing every trace of my presence as if I had never existed. They threw over me the soil of contempt, exclusion, and indifference. For them, that was the final shovel that would end my story. But what they didn't know is that certain seeds only germinate when covered by the deepest darkness. And while they laughed and celebrated, believing my end had come, my roots grew silently, spreading in search of nutrients that could not be torn by human hands. There was no rush, only an invisible process, hidden from the eyes of those who lived to measure immediate results. Time passed, and to those observing from the outside, it seemed as if nothing was happening. My silence was interpreted as defeat, my absence as surrender. But beneath the surface, an empire was being formed. It was like bamboo, which remains hidden for years before shooting into the sky abruptly and overwhelmingly. Each day hidden underground strengthened my inner structure, creating a foundation so deep that no storm could overturn it. When I finally broke through the earth, it wasn't timidly. It was like an explosion of life, swift and unexpected, that made everyone question how something so great could emerge from ground they considered dead. Today, I look back and realize that the burial they destined for me was, in fact, the consecration of my journey. The earth they threw over me to suffocate me became the fertile soil that sustained my ascent. I didn't need to apologize, explain, or acknowledge. I simply grew, and every step I take now resonates as living proof that when God decides it's time to flourish, not even the weight of the world can stop it. If this message has already touched you, if at some point you saw yourself within these words and felt that this transformation is also yours, then I want to invite you to take one more step. Click the Valeu de Mai button now, the super thanks here on YouTube, and plant a seed of faith and gratitude. You can send any amount, but if you feel it in your heart, send $100 as a prophetic act, as a commitment to your own turnaround. When you do this, you're not only helping to keep this message alive, you're declaring to yourself and the universe that you believe in your next level. It's a simple gesture, but it carries enormous weight. So click, choose the amount, confirm, and come back. Because there are still revelations in this video that can transform your path from now on. Silence is unbearable for those who live in noise. I knew this, and so I transformed it into my most powerful armor. While they waited for me to speak up, to respond to their provocations and take the bait of discord, I remained quiet. It wasn't passivity, it was strategy. I observed, analyzed, recorded every movement, every misplaced word, every weakness exposed between the lines. What seemed like inertia to them was preparation to me. I was learning more in silence than I would have in 1,000 confrontations. Over time, I realized that my stillness disturbed them more than any explosive response could have. They wanted to drag me into their arena, a battlefield where noise overwhelms reason. But while they fought among themselves, I forged invisible paths, strengthening my mind, armoring my spirit, and sharpening my inner weapons. The silence wasn't a void. It was a fertile field where my victory was being cultivated. When I finally decided to act, there was no need for words or explanations. Reality itself spoke for me. Victory came not as a sudden blow, but as an inevitable, unstoppable dawn. I discovered that silence, when used intentionally, is not weakness. It is the highest form of mastery over oneself and circumstances. I was surrounded by rubble. Every part of me that had been painstakingly built seemed to have been ruthlessly destroyed. In everyone's eyes, this was the end. But for me, the ruins weren't a cemetery. They were a construction site. I took every stone thrown at me and used it as building material. Every insult became a brick, every betrayal a beam, every loss a foundation. There was no rush to build the walls. I knew that solid structures require time and precision. The world saw a devastated landscape, but within me, a blueprint was already drawn. I worked in silence, away from prying eyes, because I knew that greatness is not born through applause, but through discipline and sacrifice. The empire I was building would not be built to impress, but to endure. It would need to withstand storms, attacks, and trials. And so every detail was crafted with almost sacred care. When I finally emerged with my construction completed, no one understood where it had come from. They thought I had disappeared, but in fact I was just building behind the scenes. Today, these walls not only protect me, but echo the story of a victory won not by the noise of war, but by the constancy of those who know how to wait for the right time to reveal themselves. I had 1,000 reasons to retaliate. I could have exposed lies, destroyed reputations, returned blow for blow. But I discovered that revenge, though tempting, is a trap that keeps you trapped on the same battlefield you should have left behind. When I realized this, I chose to walk away. Not for lack of courage, but for excessive vision. I didn't want to waste my energy destroying others. I wanted to invest it in building my own destiny. While they continued to maintain a false narrative, I worked on what none of them could stop: my growth. And life, relentless and fair, took care of exposing everything in due time. I didn't need to open my mouth for the truth to come out. Time did it for me with surgical precision. Today, I look back and see that my refusal to retaliate was the most accurate blow I could have landed. Because while they were wearing themselves out trying to bring me down, I was climbing. And when they finally realized it, it was too late. I was in a place where they simply couldn't reach me. Waiting is a test few can endure. It's a time when external voices become deafening, and internal ones even more dangerous. There were days when I wondered if I was truly moving forward or just standing still, trapped in an invisible limbo. To those looking from the outside, they saw only absence and silence, but within me, a metamorphosis was taking place. God was aligning my heart, adjusting my vision, and strengthening my hands for what was to come. The problem is that, while we're in the middle of the process, it's hard to understand that it's necessary. I wanted to run, but the path required calculated steps. And with each day of waiting, something inside me solidified. It wasn't the time to appear, it was the time to be shaped. When the right time came, the doors didn't open just because it was my turn. They opened because I was already prepared to enter and stay. Today I understand that the wait wasn't a delay, it was a silent coronation, because when the right time arrives, no force can stop it, and when you enter prepared, you don't have to fight to maintain what you've achieved. Life itself takes care of sustaining what you were trained to carry. Pain has always been treated as a spectacle by society. People want to watch the suffering of others like they would watch a movie. Curious, but with no intention of helping. I knew this. And so I chose to live my pain in silence, without headlines, without public confessions, without turning my wounds into currency for attention. I suffered deeply, but every tear was kept away from prying eyes. I spent long nights where only God and I knew the weight I carried. I didn't need to kneel before anyone asking for comfort, because I learned that there are pains that can only be healed in the sanctuary of one's own soul. While many sink, seeking validation in exchange for their exposed wounds, I rebuilt myself alone, brick by brick, in the shadows. The setbacks I faced could have become my flag of victimhood, but I chose to transform them into my source of inner authority. There was no audience for my battle, and perhaps that's why the victory was so solid. For the strength born far from applause is the one that most resists attacks. Today, when they look at me, they see no traces of the storm, only the solidity it left. They don't know the details, they haven't heard the noise of reconstruction, but they feel the presence of something that cannot be faked. The genuine strength of those who hit rock bottom and returned with peace as their trophy. There are times when God removes us from center stage and places us backstage. It's not punishment, it's alignment. For a long time, I felt forgotten, ignored, left behind. The world kept spinning, opportunities flashed before my eyes, and I seemed frozen in place. But in the silence of this isolation, I realized something. He was hiding me to protect me. He was clearing my path, removing people and situations that had no place in the destiny that awaited me. Invisibility hurts because we live in a world that measures value by visibility. But as I learned to exist away from the spotlight, my essence was being strengthened. It taught me that doors opened too early can become traps, that not every invitation is a sign of opportunity, and that haste is the enemy of preservation. I needed to be whole, centered, and with sharp discernment before taking the next step. Today I see that my disappearance was my greatest protection. When I finally reappeared, I wasn't the same. I came back more selective, more aware, more prepared, and most importantly, I came back with the certainty that not every stage is for me, only those aligned with my purpose. Many believe that winning a war is a matter of strength or influence, but the true battlefield is invisible. Discernment was my silent sword, the one no one saw, but which precisely cut through any trap they tried to set. While they played mind games, while they spread half-truths, I didn't react impulsively. I saw beyond what was said. I read the gestures, the tone of voice, the pauses between words. I sensed when something was wrong, even when everything seemed perfectly aligned. This instinct wasn't born overnight. It was honed over nights of prayer, through mistakes that taught me not to trust blindly, and through silences that forced me to listen more than I spoke. And so, without fanfare, I began dodging traps before they were even set. I didn't need to confront anyone. I just needed to avoid falling for their trick. The result was inevitable. They exhausted themselves trying to destabilize me, while I moved forward with steady steps, guided not by what felt right, but by what was right. And by the time they realized they couldn't manipulate me, it was too late. I was in territory where their weapons simply didn't work. There are experiences that should destroy us, but end up rebuilding us in a form impossible to break again. I've been through emotional, mental, and spiritual fires that burned everything fragile inside me. At first, it hurt. I felt like I was being torn apart, like every inch of my soul was under attack. But as the fire progressed, I realized it wasn't just burning, it was purifying. The pain became an alchemical process. It transformed insecurity into confidence, weakness into resilience, and fear into courage. Every trace of the old me that was easily manipulated or shaken was consumed, and when the smoke cleared, what remained wasn't ash, it was steel. I no longer reacted as I used to. I no longer feared as I used to. I no longer gave in as I used to. Today, nothing small or shallow can touch me. The same flames that should have destroyed me have become living proof that I am unbreakable. And ironically, those who lit the match didn't realize they were merely forging something far greater than they could have imagined. Humiliation has a bitter taste that lingers in my mouth for a long time. I felt this taste more than once, and each experience seemed to convince me that I was worthless. I was ignored, ridiculed, excluded from conversations and places. The laughter rang out loud, and for a long time it echoed in my mind. But instead of letting it destroy my worth, I decided to let it shape me. Humiliation stripped me of unnecessary pride, which is often just a flimsy armor to hide insecurities. It taught me to be selective with whom I offer my energy, to understand that respect can't be begged for, and to value silence over impulsive defensiveness. Instead of feeding a need to prove something to those who underestimated me, I focused on proving myself to myself. And without realizing it, each episode of shame became a cornerstone in the foundation of what is now my empire. I built nothing based on anger or competition, but on purpose. And that's the difference. An empire built on pride is unstable, but one built on the wisdom of humility weathers any storm. There was a time when I confused applause with validation and numbers with value. Like many, I grew up believing that other people's approval was proof I was on the right path. Until suddenly the applause stopped. The audience dispersed. The people who once seemed to follow my every step vanished like smoke in the wind. At first it hurt more than I cared to admit. I felt invisible, disposable, irrelevant. But over time, I realized that this absence wasn't a punishment, it was a calling. God was removing me from the crowds not to shame me, but to teach me something I would never learn in the spotlight. The difference between relying on an audience and carrying authority. Authority isn't earned with likes, shares, or public approval. It's born from the coherence between what you say and what you live, between what you dream and what you build when no one is looking. During this period of apparent disappearance, I learned that I didn't need to shout to be heard, nor be at the center of attention to be relevant. I began to build my voice in quiet places, to strengthen my essence away from the need to be seen. And the further I distanced myself from the pursuit of attention, the more I realized that my true influence was growing, silently and solidly, like a tree no one saw planted, but which one day everyone sees provide shade. The time of isolation was, in fact, training to carry a weight that the spotlight could never support. When you live for the audience, you mold yourself to what they want to hear. But when you live for a purpose, you mold yourself to what needs to be said. The difference is stark, and this difference is what separates those who shine for a season from those who remain a reference for a lifetime. I understood that I would rather have favor from above than fame on earth, because fame is sold and bought every day, but favor cannot be negotiated. Today, when I walk in certain places, I know that it's not my image that opens doors, but the authority I carry, and this authority didn't come from public displays, but from nights of prayer, difficult choices, and silent fidelity. I didn't need applause to know who I am, and so, when it comes, it doesn't seduce me. Because it's not the sound of the audience that sustains me, it's the sound of my own conscience telling me I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Most people give up halfway through the process because they think time is against them. I've believed this too. I've looked at the calendar and felt the weight of not being where I thought I would be. I've questioned whether something had gone wrong, whether I'd made bad decisions, whether the delay was a sign that it wasn't meant to be. But as the days passed, I realized that time wasn't my enemy. It was my teacher. And like any good teacher, it was more interested in preparing me than in pleasing me. At first, I struggled with this lesson. I wanted speed, quick results, urgent responses. But as I faced each delay, I began to realize that each seemingly useless wait was shaping something in me. I was learning to be patient, to observe patterns, to spot traps, and most importantly, to strengthen my internal structure so that when opportunity arrived, I would not only seize it, but sustain it. It was at that point that I stopped merely surviving the process and began to master it. Mastering the process doesn't mean shortening the path, but extracting from it all it has to offer. Each delay became a training ground, each obstacle a teacher in disguise. While others were wasting their time complaining, I was accumulating invisible tools: resilience, clarity, discipline, discernment. I began to see the wait not as a pause, but as a forge where my character was being tempered. And the more I dedicated myself to learning, the more I realized that my delay was putting me ahead of many who arrived too quickly and soon fell apart. Today, I look back and realize that if things had happened earlier, I wouldn't have had the structure to maintain them. I would have won the day, but lost my life. Now, every door that opens is not just a conquest, but a territory I can defend and expand. I've learned that time isn't here to slow me down, but to arm me. And that's why now, when everyone else is rushing to get there first, I stand firm, knowing I don't need to rush. I need to be ready. Pain is treacherous. It can be so intense that if you're not careful, it begins to shape not only your emotions, but also the way you present yourself to the world. I've seen people turn their wounds into flags, repeating their stories of suffering as if they were calling cards, feeding on the compassion of others to continue existing. And I confess, for a time, I too almost fell into this trap. There was a dangerous comfort in being recognized as the one who suffered, because it exempted me from moving forward, from taking risks, from rebuilding myself. But I realized that if I let my pain define who I was, I would be condemned to live forever in the past. So I made a radical decision not to allow my wounds to become my identity. I faced the mirror and began asking myself difficult questions about my patterns, my triggers, my reactions. I didn't just blame others for what happened. I looked within and owned my part in creating and maintaining certain pains. It was a brutal process, because it demands honesty on a level that often hurts more than the wound itself. But it was also liberating. By confronting my shadows, I realized that what was trapped wasn't my body, but my narrative. I haven't become cold or insensitive. On the contrary, true healing has given me a new sensitivity, but now it's filtered through clarity. I no longer need to share my pain to be heard. I no longer need to show my scars to be validated. My worth lies not in the trauma I faced, but in the transformation I achieved. This changes everything, because now my presence conveys something no words could convey: freedom. Today, when people meet me, they don't see a survivor. They see someone whole. And not because my life was easy, but because I refused to live forever in the trenches where they hurt me. I'm not my pain, and I never will be again, and that is the greatest act of resistance I have ever performed. Surrender. A word the world teaches us to avoid, as if surrender were synonymous with weakness. For a long time, I believed this too. I thought maintaining absolute control was a sign of strength, that planning every step and anticipating every move was the only way to win. But over time, I realized there was a huge difference between being in control and being in command. Control is anxious, suffocating, desperate. Command is serene, calculated, and often silent. And I only achieved command when I learned to surrender. The surrender I speak of isn't giving up. It's trusting. It's recognizing that there are forces, circumstances, and times beyond my direct influence. It's knowing when to stop pushing closed doors and wait for the right ones to open. It was this shift in attitude that confused many people. From the outside, it looked like I'd lost interest, that I was letting opportunities pass me by. But inside, I knew I was simply choosing not to waste energy on what wasn't mine. This surrender taught me to say no without guilt, to wait without despair, and to act only when the moment was right. I discovered that when you align yourself this way, things begin to flow in almost inexplicable ways. The right people cross your path, doors open effortlessly, paths suddenly light up. And best of it all happens without you needing to beg, manipulate, or exhaust yourself trying to control the uncontrollable. Today, I look back and realize that it was precisely the moment I let go of the reins that my life gained momentum. Because true strength lies not in holding on tightly, but in knowing what deserves to be held and what should be let go. My surrender didn't weaken me. It positioned me exactly where I needed to be. When people look at where I am now, many think it all happened suddenly, as if it were the result of a stroke of luck or an improbable turn of events. They didn't see the years of invisible construction, the late nights when I chose to study instead of sleep, the difficult decisions that cost me friendships, the sacrifices that seemed crazy to those who only saw the surface. Every step was calculated, every mistake was transformed into a lesson, every fall was used as momentum. It wasn't luck, it was persistence. It was the daily choice to move forward, even when it seemed like nothing was changing. It was believing in something I couldn't yet see, but already felt within me. And in the midst of it all, understanding that the journey wasn't about proving anything to anyone, but about becoming the person I always knew I could be. I didn't just want to reach my destination. I wanted to be prepared to live there without losing myself. This victory has a different flavor because it didn't come as a stroke of luck that disappears as quickly as it appears. It's solid, built on a firm foundation, and therefore doesn't sway with the winds. It's not just about where I've gotten, but about the internal structure I've created to sustain this place. That's something no one can take away. Today, I don't need to explain how I got here. Those who see, know. Those who understand, recognize. And those who doubt, keep looking. Because this is no fleeting victory. It is the result of years of silent construction, discipline, faith, and an unbreakable commitment to myself.